Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor. And today we're going to have an awesome show for you. We're going to be talking about the books that I'm reading right now, which I know some people wanted to hear about, and that's exciting. And also, we're going to talk, and Darren's here. Welcome, Darren.
Hello?
Darren also may have some book recommendations, and he's going to talk about what he's reading. He is very knowledgeable in this subject, so we're very grateful to have him here. And then also one of the things I want from the audience is if you guys have recommendations for me to read, if you have something you want me to read and cover on the channel, I'd love to hear your recommendations. So just that's I'm leaving that out there. Leave that in the chat and I will hopefully get to it eventually, or find someone who is maybe an expert in it. Maybe I'll find the author. You never know, unless it's someone dead. That might be difficult.
I could see how that could be a hindrance.
Though, Darren, could you find someone that's dead?
Well, no.
Oh, dang it!
Maybe their gravesite.
Now, wouldn't that be a great episode? Going
Yeah.
to their gravesite.
Well, yeah. Right. Here we go. Actually, that might actually be kind of neat if it was like Tolkien or Lewis, just for the fact that I think they're like in Oxford, right? You'd have to actually go out
Should we go do review Lord of the Rings at the
in,
grave?
in England. Yeah.
I feel
At,
I feel
at
like
the at the gravesite of Luthien and Baron.
yeah. He Tolkien did use name him and his wife Beren and Luthien on the graves.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but maybe we should one day take a trip to England and do that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be a lot of fun. That would be an epic episode. Maybe distasteful. I don't
Well,
know. Is that
yeah,
just me?
maybe not actually recording the show at the gravesite, but at least
Maybe in a pub or something.
maybe
Maybe
yeah,
in the
maybe yeah.
what's that pub? Do you know what the pub that they
That the Inklings met at, I have no idea. I can't. I know. I've probably heard of it before, but it's not something that I keep at the forefront of my mind. So
Anyway, so yeah, Rosie, I have read Lord of the Rings. I have some podcasts on Lord of the Rings. Some on the Darren and I've reviewed the Rings of Power,
I've never
even
seen
though
it.
he's never seen it, which actually makes it all the better. I explain the Rings of Power to Darren, and those are great. I replaced him with Taylor Marshall for the last episode, but but also I did the same thing with Taylor Marshall. He hadn't seen the final episode or like half the season, um so yeah. So anyways, so I'm going to start off with just a book that I'm prepping for I believe a future interview. Hold on a second.
10 Ways to Destroy the Imagination of a Child
Yep.
by who is the author?
Anthony Esolen.
Oh, okay.
So I think he's going to be a great person to talk about just the purpose of literature and how helpful, literature is to children and just everyone. Oh, Rosie says the Eagle and Child is the name of the bar,
Ah,
or yeah, tavern or whatever it is. Anyway, so 10 ways to destroy the imagination of your child. You learn a lot about, I would say, what books to read in that. I mean, it's satirical insofar as it's, explaining how not to do that by telling you how you would do that,
yeah,
how you would destroy the imagination of your child so you can avoid that, which is fun.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that I really enjoy about some of the books that I read is that as I start reading them, I kind of reference other books, and so it's like it starts giving me like I was like, I need to understand this reference better, so I need to go read that book. So like I read the brothers Karamazov like a couple of years ago, and one of the books that they reference is The Last of the Mohicans, uh,
Interesting.
which is you would think that that would be something that they'd reference, but they apparently James Fenimore Cooper was really popular at the time that Dostoevsky was writing, so he referenced it, and I was like, I need to read that book. I haven't even seen the movie, so
Neither
I was
neither
like,
have I, so
I gotta read the book before I watch the movie. And I read one review where it was like, "Oh, the movie's way better," and then I saw who that reviewer was, and it was like Siskel of Siskel and Ebert, and I was like, "Well, of course he's gonna say that."
I do not know who that is. What?
You not have you never heard of Siskel and Ebert?
No.
In the '90s, they had a show like they're like they had a show that would be on like Saturday afternoon, and it'd be like a half-hour show, and what they'd be doing is just reviewing like 3 to 5 movies that were coming out, and they'd give it a thumbs up and a thumbs down if they liked it. And so they, I can't believe you never heard of Siskel and Ebert.
Also, Rosie is disappointed.
I've seen the movie now. I didn't see the movie at the time.
The Last of the Mohicans?
It- yeah. I've watched The
Oh,
Last of the Mohicans since. I read the
good.
book first though. The first
Oh,
the
okay,
first
good.
the first 10 pages were pretty brutal because it was just he was describing the land and he was using surveyor language that we do not use in common parlance anymore. And so it's just like I have no idea what he is talking about.
Yeah. Also, if you're just joining us, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Plotlines to help us out. That would be it'd be so awesome if you did that. We're at like 616 or something. We're trying to get to 1,000. So YouTube will recommend Plotlines for other people to watch. So really, it's helpful to spread. It's if you like the show, you want to spread it to more people so you can uh grow the community. So help us do that. So I have another book that I'm reading that it's basically I'm going to have to read it a number of times because I barely understand it.
Oh yeah, is that it's Tolkien? Oh, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yeah.
And is that the only one, or is that there are a couple other stories in there as well?
There's the Pearl and Sir Orfeo.
Sir Orfeo. Okay.
Do you know those stories?
I know Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I don't know the other two.
Yeah.
So
So
I have a copy of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight that I have not read, but
mhm.
it wasn't the. So I don't know if that's Tolkien rewriting it or if he's just translating it from like Middle English to like more modern English.
He's translating it. That's my
Okay.
understanding. But my point is that even I'm really confused with the language and maybe a lot of the references.
Hmm.
So I probably will eventually do a show with somebody who can, you know, do a good explanation.
I
Or
I know Anthony loves the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Anthony R. Anthony?
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
because there was a movie that came out and he said he went to go see it and he was like he was so disappointed with the movie because it was such a modern take on these ideas and like it just ruined the story. Um,
Well, I
because
wonder if there's a more like because Tolkien really translates it into sort of it may be supposed to be modern English, but it doesn't seem like modern English.
yeah, well, I mean, like it, yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough. I mean, even like English of like a couple centuries ago, the proper English is like a little bit difficult to read. Like even
Yeah.
like trying to read Geoffrey Chaucer and like translated, it's like this is not how people write today.
Well, well, Chaucer's Middle English,
Yeah,
so he's
yeah, but
translating in basically you could almost say middle. modern English. He's translating into middle modern English because when if you look at the way Tolkien wrote, he writes extraordinarily different when he's writing The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings versus when he's writing the Silmarillion and his
Well,
older stuff.
Silmarillion is not really a completed work. It's his son ended up editing a lot of that and then putting it together.
Well,
So
yeah, but
that's
I'm
a big
guessing because
reason why it's like completely different.
well, I think it's more because he wrote it when he did like
He was still sketching out the stories. They weren't completed.
well, but before he before Christopher edited it, most of what he was editing was from like the 20s and 30s. And then The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings are from like the later 30s, I think, and the 40s.
Yeah, well, yeah, but then also like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. By the time he's like editing that, he even kind of acknowledges that originally he was not trying to create a work that had anything to do with like the Christian faith and religion, like just completely unique by itself. And like in one of his edits, he consciously was editing it to be somewhat analogous to it. So with the Silmarillion, because those aren't really stories that were edited for that purpose, they kind of have like you know any kind of like they're stories, but they didn't have any like unique kind of like typology that is associated to a story that we would know well.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's definitely not it. I mean, I think the translation. I don't know if the translation was published during his time either. I think it was published afterwards, but well, it might have been out in some capacity, but then it was just published. But
Mhm.
I don't think it was released. So it's the same thing with this. Is that it's definitely not edited by
Yeah,
Tolkien. It's edited by Christopher. It's still a lot of fun, and to me it's like deciphering. I'm just trying to decipher what the heck is he trying to say.
yeah. Have you ever
Uh
have you ever tried reading T.H. White's The Once and Future King?
no, I haven't. Didn't he is that a guy or a woman?
I'm not clear on who T.H. White is actually. I just know it was written by T.H. White.
Interesting.
Let me look that up real quick. No, definitely a dude.
Okay. I didn't he also write The Sword in the Stone?
Well, that's so the Once and Future King is technically like four different like anthologies put into like one single book kind of thing. And so like the first one is kind of Arthur growing up, and it's kind of where Sword in the Stone gets all the material. So
Rose
basically, a Sword in the Stone. Yeah.
Okay. Rosie, what do I need to read? Read what? Um but yeah, okay. So what
Also,
what
also, you learn that Lancelot was actually really, really ugly,
stop spoiling things.
but it's so awesome. He's ugly.
Then why does
Anyway,
Guinevere fall in love with him? Or not
pit,
fall in love with him, lust after him?
pity.
Really? Oh, that's so
that's
weird.
that's literally what it is.
That's oh, okay. The Runs Feature King.
Yeah.
I'll get around to it definitely. I intended because I did watch the Sword and Stone recently,
No.
or for the first time, because
Yeah.
it wasn't part of my childhood, but I intend
It's
to
not that great of
look
a
into.
cartoon. The
Uh,
book's better.
okay, but the song is great.
I don't remember the song from
You
Sword
don't
in the
remember
Stone.
the song?
I don't remember the songs from Sword in the Stone.
We might have to listen to the song.
Oh no.
I don't know if we'll get taken down from YouTube because of this,
Oh yeah.
but who knows? Hold on. Anyways, Darren, tell your book. Tell the book you're reading. Tell us the book you're
So
reading.
I technically have three books that I'm reading,
Oh yes, that's great.
but to be fair, I have three books that I'm reading because I completed the first chapter of two of them today.
Wait, say that again?
I completed the first chapter or two of them today, so I can technically say that I'm reading them. So one of them I've had for about 15 years. I've just never read it. It's called The Coming of God by Maria Bolding, the Benedictine nun. It's basically it's Advent reading. So talking about the coming of God. So it's interesting. Just even like the first chapter, there's some interesting stuff in there where she kind of relates the idea of poverty, not less from a monetary perspective, but as a concept of how much hope a person acknowledges. So, like somebody who may be impoverished in a monetary sense can still be impoverished in the soul because maybe the challenges of trying to get out of that situation, they've just grown, like they've developed a despair that their life is never going to get better, and so that's when they're truly into like a complete poverty. It's by Maria Bolding. I just thought Rosie was asking it again. Um, and then similarly, like somebody who has material wealth, like, and you hear this a lot, like people who decide that they don't want to continue like bringing children into this world, or like that things politics have gotten so bad that why even bother, like it's that hope, like it's that loss of hopelessness, like it's this just kind of that general despair that is a sign of kind of a spiritual impoverishment, that you're not really interested in participating in life and society because you don't believe that it makes a difference or it matters.
Gotcha.
So that's just the first chapter. I got like the 10 more to go.
Okay. Very deep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's listen to the song. Way less deep. Well, in some ways less deep, in some ways more deep. Let me know if you can hear. Can you hear it?
Is it playing? I can't hear it. I can't hear it.
Okay, let me see if I can do this better.
Still no.
I haven't got.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear it.
A legend is sung of when England was young, and knights were brave and bold. The good king had died, and no one could decide who was rightful heir to the throne. It seemed that the land would be torn by war, or saved by a miracle alone. And that miracle appeared in London town. The sword in the stone.
And below the hilt, in letters of gold, were written these words: Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is rightwise king.
Though they tried for the sword with all their might, no knight in all the land could draw the wondrous blade from its resting place. Its secret they could not understand. The one who was meant to rule the land and worthy of the throne sword with a humble heart, and not for himself alone. He will be the one who was born to claim the sword in the stone.
Yeah, it's good.
See?
You should read the you should definitely read Once a Future King.
Yes, indeed. There's
I
also
I'd be interested to hear your after reading it. I'd be interested to hear your take on a couple of there's a couple ideas that are thrown out there. I'd be interested to hear what you think about them.
epic. Also,
Yeah.
there's the Daily Wire is doing a TV or coming out with a TV show like in the next couple of years on like a creation, basically a book series. It's based on a book series
Mm-hmm.
on King Arthur.
Yeah.
So that should be interesting too.
Yeah, he's a fascinating character for a lot of reasons. But like the Once and Future King, I know is a really pivotal work in like for our modern, like it launches a lot of modern mythology
Yeah,
for what we kind of understand about King Arthur. So
definitely. Okay. Now, moving on to the next book I'm reading. These are
yeah,
all books I'm currently reading.
yeah. Hey, that's great.
I mean, I kind of have a problem.
That's
I
fine. You know, I used to be. I'm going to read one book and I'm going to get through it, and I like somebody's like, well, why? It's like I got to the point where it's like it is actually more fun to read like 2 or 3 books at once, especially if you're not watching television, because then the books become like your TV shows that so like you devote like an hour or so to each of them, or like take the time to read a chapter, then set it down and move to the next one, and that's like your devoted time to like seeing the next segment of this like kind of story that you're paying
yeah,
attention to.
I think I just might have trouble staying like keeping attention on one thing.
That could be it too.
Yeah. Anyways,
I
can you see that?
your foot's in the way.
Oh, of course.
The Two Cities by Andrew Willard Jones.
Yep. Okay, so this is principally it's also subtitled A History of Christian Politics.
That
So
could be a pretty fascinating read.
it is. I think it's a bit too
Dense?
general for me in
Oh,
some
too
ways.
general, not too specific.
Yeah, it's a little bit general.
So how far back does it go historically?
Adam and Eve?
Oh, so really, I mean, it's going back to like the proto man, and then like coming forward, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like starts with biblical history.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the age of creation, I think, the age of the sword, I think, or something like that, and then age of grace. I'm probably butchering those. But basically the age of the law, that's what it is. Age of the law, then age of grace. And then we get into post, well, I guess we're in the age of grace right now.
Yeah.
Because post the
Post Christ.
resurrection.
Yeah.
Yeah, post Christ. So that's kind of the staple, and then it kind of takes you through the main story of Christendom.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, I don't know if it really touches about it. It's really what's really fascinating is the 500-year period that we usually associate with Christendom is one of the most turbulent times and world politics, and it's really fascinating because we usually think about it as like this golden period of the church,
Wait, what years are you talking about?
about like from 1000 to 1500.
Yeah, it
Uh,
definitely goes
It's like
into.
we had two great schisms between the West and the East, and then we had the Great Schism of the West, where we had three popes in that
Yeah.
same time period. We had uh, Pope Gregory the Seventh, Saint Pope Gregory the Seventh, put the hammer down the uh, on the Holy Roman emperors, who for about 100 years were basically pulling the strings of the Vatican, and said, "No, like we're above the state. The state doesn't control us." And that just created such a huge power vacuum until like France kind of started developing until that France basically kidnapped the Pope and took him to Avignon, and then you had the development of what we know today as like nation states, like modern Europe started like dividing itself,
Yeah.
and it's just a absolutely fascinating period in terms of like politics and everything going on, but like at the same time, it's just like we oftentimes think it's also the time of like Aquinas and Catherine of Siena and Teresa of Avila, like these amazing Saint Francis of Assisi, these amazing saints that we kind of like usually associate with like the golden age of the church, and yet at the same time, it was one of the most turbulent political points of history to have ever. I mean, in European history, but it's like considered the height of Christendom. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's true. That is a part that it definitely goes into. Uh, I would really say like I want to find a book that is strictly about sort of like from the sack of Rome to maybe like the Luther.
Yeah.
Like I want
I-
an in-depth series or volume or some couple volumes or
There's
something.
there's a book by Tom Holland called Millennium, and he talks about he goes in depth about what was happening with the Normans, with the Slavs, like the Russes, that became Russia.
Mhm.
That like the develop like which would have been like the early years of the development of Christendom, like from like 940 to about just after that to about 1080, to like to basically the meeting of Canossa. So it doesn't go quite as far back as you want to go. It doesn't go quite as far forward, but it's right there in the middle where it kind of talks about how in that time period, like it's the time period of England leading up to William of Orange conquering it, and how England kind of like because it was a unique kind of thing even then because it was an island. So usually, so like in in the main continent, everybody was just going off and like conquering new land and pushing their borders. In England, they couldn't do that because their borders had an edge. So it's like, but like how England kind of like developed this singular currency, like the British pound was being developed at that time, and how it kind of made itself kind of a target because it became an economic powerhouse even at that time, and it became a target to the Vikings. And then it was like but but it didn't have that same kind of fighting edge of like trying to like develop like new land, so it didn't have that same fighting edge to be able to defend itself. So it's just a fascinating book. I would recommend it. It's called
Uh,
the it's called Millennium by Tom
Millennium.
Holland. Or
Okay.
it's also I think it also has another title like The Forge of Christendom, but
S-
Millennium is the title of the book that I have.
Is Spider-Man a good author?
Spider-Man a good? Oh yeah, Tom Holland. Yeah, I so I know. So that's actually another
Ooh.
one of his books that I'm currently reading is Dominion. I just
Mhm.
started it. I know again like that's one that Anthony has talked about that he really enjoys. I've also read his books Rubicon and Persian Fire, which is like the story of the full story of like the Persian invasion into Greece, like kind of like the starting of it, kind of a back history of Sparta, a back history of Athens, a back history of Persia, and how they developed, and then kind of going to even beyond the story of the 300.
I'm gonna have to find time to read all of these books.
They are some really good books, good
Yeah.
history books. I do like so. So there's some things that Tom Holland doesn't touch upon that actually work, but overall, I think he does a good job of do storytelling, like putting it into a story to make it easier to making the because sometimes history can be very very dry, and he does a good job of putting it into this compelling story of history that makes it very readable and enjoyable.
Yeah, sounds like it. Anyway, so light
Lights.
lights. Just so you know, we want to hear from the audience too. What books you recommend me to read and maybe cover on the channel, or talk to the author. Again, not we probably won't be able to get any of the dead ones. But we have ideas to make to Darren and I might figure out a way to
Still make it work somehow.
yeah, to make it work somehow. I live very close to Tolkien's desk he wrote The Hobbit on,
Oh, that's very cool.
so we could do that.
Yeah, that would be very neat.
Yeah, do the episode while being at the desk. That'd be kind of interesting. Anyways, I don't think we'd be allowed to do that, but whatever. Anyway, so let us know what you think either of us should read or anything like that. But yeah, so you said Dominion. Do you have anything? What is Dominion about? Exactly.
Dominion is basically making a case of how the Christian Revolution changed the world. So it's like,
Revolution.
well, so you had the Greeks and you had the Romans and you had like you had like you almost have to make sure that you have a little bit of a history on Greek and Roman mythology and how they understood their worldview. And it's like we look at some of these ancient and classic writings and say how these are genius, but like it's like, but none of them really define Western culture in the same way that Christianity really defines the Western culture that we've grown up in and really conceptualize. And so he's basically making the case that like this and it was revolutionary at the time when Christ. I mean, the idea that to conquer the world, you didn't actually have to, take up a sword and conquer people and bind them and turn them into slavery, but rather to conquer the world, you would enter deeply into humility and like kind of like like it is a very radical shift. I mean, even just like the Desert Fathers, uh, the Desert Fathers are kind of a byproduct of Christian persecution. Like they to escape Christian persecution, they just kind of like escaped from the world and went into the desert, and developed kind of a new and as a result they kind of developed new communities and developed this monasticism that becomes such a huge piece of Christendom.
Yeah, that's actually a lot of that is talked about in the Two Cities too.
Yeah.
Sort of just the philosophy of the Romans and the Greeks and sort of the pagan kingdoms and that sort of thing, and how kingship is viewed from a Christian perspective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the whole one thing that I've been learning with some of my reading is like the whole like King of Kings kind of statement. Like there is a lot of I think there is a lot of even like the Jewish worldview of things that was heavily kind of influenced by Persia, the Persian power. Um, that basically freed them from the bondage of Babylon and allowed them to go back to their land. Like that, like there's a lot of, you can tell, like when you really read historically into some of that, you can really see that the Jews definitely had a lot of respect. And even when you get to the point where, the Romans being in charge of them, like the Jews become a problem because they actually start courting Parthia to, like, hey, like we really liked it when Parthia was Persia. Like we're sure we'd love you guys again. Come over and defeat these Romans. And Rome was like, we need to stop.
Yeah.
This book Dominion is by Tom Holland. So there might be another book titled Dominion by Father Ripperger. I don't know, but this one I'm talking about is by Tom Holland.
That one's a history book.
Yeah.
We have we have another history book that I'm going to show, and a few of these I'm like almost done with them, but just taking a while.
Mhm.
History books I think are hard to read like all the way through.
You get to a certain point, or maybe you disagree with some of the conclusions, and you're just like, blah.
This is a big one.
Puritan's Empire
by Charles Coulomb.
Okay, I've heard of that guy.
So basically,
I think we can interview the author, right?
That's
I think
true.
You have interviewed the author
like 11 times.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd get you'd think he'd get bored by me or annoyed by me at this point, but
No,
apparently not. But anyways, it's a great book. It's one of those things that he goes. It's a history about America, but it takes you back much further than that to give you sort of a general understanding of history, and then it brings you forward, and it goes into the colonies and that sort of thing.
How far back does he go? Does he go to like the 17th century England, or further back than that?
Let me just check. It basically gives you an overview of Europe, the Americas, Africa, Asia, and and then it goes into like the conquistadors, and then so that's
the Spanish conquistador. Okay, so kind of like what the general philosophy was or spirit was at the time that the Puritan shakeup kind of happened.
Yeah, it's also just not America in a larger sort of concept.
So it's not just U.S. America; it's America like the Western Hemisphere America.
Okay, so it is America on a more intimate level, if that makes sense. Like it's specifically in a history of the United States.
Oh, it is
on a much more in-depth thing. But to tell the story of the United States, he tells he periodically tells you what's going on broadly in other regions of North and South America, as well as like, okay, World War II, what's going on in in politics in Europe.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure that's what makes it really compelling and fascinating. A lot of times when you read what's happening in a certain area, it's hard to understand why they did certain things. And then when you kind of conceptualize, here's what else was going on, and you're like, oh, like that kind of starts making sense now. Like, yeah, I can see why they might actually want to do X, Y, or Z. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I think are really hard to understand or seem hard to understand from our perspective, especially when we think of the way we're taught history, just in general, like sort of from a America, greatest country in the world perspective, or
and then the way that history is taught, generally speaking, is really boring.
Well, that's
because
true.
It's not because we don't really have we're not a common people.
Well, there's no narrative.
You're right, exactly. There's no narrative to it because we're not a common people. It's not really telling of our story. It's just the telling of this happened and this happened, and it makes history a very dry and boring kind of topic.
Yeah,
because
and
you're not allowed to you're not really allowed to narrate that from the perspective of this is who we are. And it's one of the best jokes. It's a great joke from Norm Macdonald. He's like, I was reading this history book, and it's amazing that the good guy won every time. Like, isn't that just a wonderful coincidence?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think in our like in our schools and in our educations, definitely, it always feels like the victor, you know, writes the history
The
books kind of
the
thing.
the only time, the only point the only thing that I think, the only history that I think I've been given where I was told that maybe the good guy did not win that I can think of is the Spanish Civil War.
Okay, but they
Because
don't
that would
teach about that for the most part.
they don't teach too much about that, but there's enough of it where it's the nationalists and the Republicans. And one of the things I remember that they taught about was that the nationalists received help from Hitler, and that's one of the reasons why Hitler knew that some of his weapons of war like worked, is because he was already kind of testing them and allowing them to be utilized by the Spanish in their civil war.
Yeah.
That's one, and it just gives this. And then of course, because Franco was fascist, and so all fascism is bad, and so you're given this kind of like this this kind of colorization that maybe in the Spanish Civil War the wrong guy won. But the thing that they never really tell you is that, oh yeah, the Republicans on the other side were communists, and they were destroying all these monasteries and churches, and they were persecuting anybody who was who was holding on to Christianity.
Yeah, indeed.
So I mean, like, so it does. And that's part of part of that is they don't really go in depth and talk about it, but the little bit that they do talk about it, because they all touch upon it, they shade it. They touch upon it just enough to give you that shading that maybe the wrong guy won that war. And
Well,
that's the only time. That's one time in my modern history lessons that I feel like they do kind of try to tell you, well, the wrong guy won, but they never really go into it in enough detail for you to make your own conclusion.
yeah. I also think that just generally speaking, they want you to know like just the facts of the situation, so you don't or like bland facts, so
Yeah.
you don't come to your own conclusions.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like the World War I Museum is here in Kansas City, and I've gone to it 2 or 3 times. I need to go again, because every time I go, I feel like I'm learning something new, because it's huge, and like you do get exhausted with it, because like you can spend 3 hours in there and like you've never left one room, and it's like, oh, I got to get moving. So
I could see you getting like trapped there.
they have this huge wall of like timeline of major events, and I'm like, I cannot just sit here and read all this, because there's all these other stuff that's going on here. It's like it's so difficult. So yeah, you got to take multiple trips to it, but it's really good. And one of the things that's really good about it is they'll do a short little 15-minute video before you go in, and it's just giving you a cultural perspective of what was going on at the time, and how everything, like, there really was not a winner in the First World War. Everybody was kind of a loser.
Except for Roosevelt, or not Roosevelt, Wilson. Except for Wilson.
Yeah,
Wilson won. But even though he lost at home, but he won abroad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think they should recast Ben Stiller in Night at the Museum with Darren. I think
Who?
that
With who?
you,
But why?
because
I'd get eaten by that dinosaur so fast.
because you love him.
I'd just be like hanging out like in the dinosaur's belly, like, help me.
Well, Okay. You don't think you could convince the dinosaur not to eat you?
I I I I the following morning I'd be like inside the dinosaur and they'd fire me.
Okay. Well, but
That
either
that would
way,
be a quick that would be a quick movie.
what if it was instead of Night at the Museum in New York, it was this museum, this World War One museum in Kansas City?
That would be I'd probably get shot. Yeah, that wouldn't
you,
be good either.
you couldn't convince them to stop fighting each other?
I don't think so.
Don't they know it's futile?
Well, they don't really have a whole lot of mannequins there. They do have
Oh,
one
okay.
kind of like setup where it kind of shows you like the stage of war. It's just, I mean, it was just so messy. I mean, the chemical warfare was kind of introduced, and then they quickly were like, we cannot be doing this. This is such a crime against humanity. But part of I mean, part of it was, yes, it's a crime against humanity in the sense that it's killing civilians, but also it's like if the wind changes, you're killing your own troops. Like it's
Yeah.
such a and then like there's another book that I read, and my voice is cracking. Um, All Quiet on the Western Front.
Isn't that
So
a movie too?
it is a movie, but it's a book first.
Really?
So it's a book called All Quiet on the Western Front, and it follows the story of a soldier who kind of gets leave. He goes back home, and it's just he's like maybe 18 or 19 years old. He's talking about just the and this is just the First World War, and it's talking about how like this is the transition from kind of adolescence into manhood, and this is what they this is what they were given is war, and like they're all their innocence is completely like there's no way that they're going to be able like how are they going to transition back into normal society kind of thing. Like it's just
Mhm.
like how do you do that? And then he goes back to the and then he goes back to the front and just he's telling the story about different things that he's seeing. Like basically like everybody in his unit basically gets killed or dies. Um, you know, gas comes in and like somebody, he's like teaching new recruits to come in, and he's like half of these people by the time they learn the lessons that we learned, they're going to be dead because it's like they're not going to know what the sound like because the different sound of the different weapons and the artillery mean different things. And so like when one is coming and one is just like you don't need to worry about the sound, but how do you teach somebody new? Like it's like teaching somebody a new job, except that if you don't get it right the first time, you're dead. So it's just such a. I mean, it does. In some respects, it's kind of like the red badge of courage, in the sense that it does a good job of really helping you read into the sense and feel of what it would have been like to be on the front line and to be a soldier in the war. So
Gotcha.
it's good. It's good from that respect. I haven't seen the movie, but I have read the book, and I thought it was a pretty decent book.
Okay.
For I'm not really into war novels, war books. Uh, they're I mean they're just extraordinarily depressing, and they're trying to detail. I mean if they're being real, they're detailing things that are just terrible.
Have you seen
Um,
the movie or the TV series? What was it?
Band of
Uh
Brothers.
yeah, Band of Brothers.
I have seen Band of Brothers. That's very good.
Yeah, that was it's surprisingly lighthearted at certain points.
Yeah, no, I think, I think, I mean, obviously it's following like what the 101st Airborne, but like it does a good job of just kind of like pacing itself. It paced it. The whole show was at a good pace where you kind of got the glimpse of the stuff that they went through. But it was, but yeah, it was lighthearted enough that it like, it moved it along. Like they, like and kind of, I think part of that too is just it's the humanity. Like it's just even in the middle of war, you're trying to make sense out of it all, right? Like you're trying to, you got some relative hope that you're going to make it back, and just that kind of concept that if you really want to be good at what you're doing here, like being a soldier, you can't be thinking about home. Like you can't be thinking about the fact that you're going to go back, because it's not going to make it. You're not going to be able to do what you need to do in the present.
Yeah, definitely. One movie I could not like, I made through, but I did not enjoy watching it. Was that movie about Hitler that's in German that has that famous meme? Uh,
Are we the baddies? That
no,
one. I
no,
don't know.
no. It's in
That
German.
meme.
No.
I don't.
It's a famous. It's like a YouTube video often that like they change the translation to make it funny.
I haven't seen it,
I can't remember
so
what
I
it's
wouldn't be
called.
able to tell you what it's called.
It's just some. It's just a. I don't know. I can't remember what it is. But anyways, do you have what's the?
Hogan's Heroes, the movie.
I was just watching Hogan's Heroes earlier today. I love that TV show is great. Uh, all made by the Amish. Uh, that show was made by them.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then, what's the third book you're reading right now?
The third book is a fiction book by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle. So this one is supposed to be about Lithuanian immigrants working in the meatpacking district of Chicago. And so apparently when it came out, it really kind of brought to light the conditions of like the deplorable conditions there. So like I've only read one chapter. The first chapter is talking about like a wedding, and just about how like these people are really impoverished, like they're making like 40 cents an hour, and it's backbreaking work kind of thing. And like one of the guys in the story is like a beef deboner, and he's talking about like, and the meat is wet, your knife is wet, your knife is sharp. Somebody talks to you and your knife hits bone, but it's not the beef bone. And like the problem is the fact that you cut yourself. The problem is that you don't know how it's going to heal. And so it's like he was off for 3 months, and then like healing one time, and then another incident he was off 6 or 7 months, and then he lost his job. So to get his job back, he got to you're among the huddled mass outside the factory looking for work, because people don't show up. Like they'll go out and they'll handpick somebody, come on in, like you're working today, and you're hired, right? So it's like that's but then it's interesting that I'm reading this coming of God with it, because it's like they're talking about what we would commonly think of as dollar dance at this wedding, where it's just this kind of thing where people put in like $1 or $5 into this hat, and they're talking about how like $300, and that's more than anybody here makes in a year.
So
like any of the so it's like people are truly sacrificing the start, and like and then talking about how all that $300, it's supposed to be this good start, but reality is all that $300 is going to go to the bartender and to pay for everything, pay for the festivities.
They should really they should really just get a Patreon.
I know. What were these people thinking? But it's just
$1 a month on Patreon.
Right. But it's fascinating. Well, yeah, $1 a month, which is like 2 hours of work a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting, because it's talking about how like they're just refusing to be like it's a hang on to this tradition, because it's something that really does offer kind of a hope, and in the midst of their like such despairing poverty. And so it's like they're just like they refuse to give it up, even though they know that it's basically making their lives harder by hanging on to this tradition. But it's
Yeah.
just it's just such a wonderful juxtaposition to what I'm reading with like the other book. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's kind of interesting. We're both ending on the fiction book we're reading.
yeah.
So here is the fiction book that I am reading.
Sword and Serpent. So yeah, I think you could interview the author of that one too.
Yes, yes. So yeah, Sword and Serpent by Taylor Marshall. It's one of those books that, or how often do you start reading a book and then you've put it down for so long, not necessarily because you weren't enjoying it or anything, but just because your mind went to different books and then you go back and pick it up.
I've done that a few times. I do that. I've done that with a few Graham Greene novels. That it's like I get into them, and then like I get to a certain point, and I'm go something else, and I'm like, oh yeah, I still have like 3 more chapters to finish in this book.
Well,
Yeah.
this one I ended up I read like 10 chapters and then I forgot part of the story, so I have to go back. So I'm
Oh,
going back and rereading parts of the so
see, it depends. It depends on how much I enjoyed the book before I got to the point where I started skipping out. So like Three Musketeers is a book that like I read maybe the first 100 pages of it, and then I set it down for like a year, and I was like, I just can't pick it up for where I was at. I'm going to have to go back to the very beginning because like I wasn't. Some of those books, like I feel like I need to read them twice to really fully appreciate it.
yeah.
Right.
True, very, very true. Yes. So some books, it's more for me. It's more about how long I put it down. If
Yeah.
if it's a couple months, I can get back and like I'll start reading, and then it will all come back to me.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a point when it's just like I have to go back. So and it's also the structure of the storytelling is kind of like one chapter is about this character, then the other chapter goes to a different location,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of switches back and forth. Every chapter is the other, switches pretty much. There are occasionally where it doesn't, at least for the first part. I don't know if it changes later down the line. I assume the story is going to come together eventually. But anyways, it's a very interesting story just because it's set in really early Christian times. It's Saint George and the Dragon, basically.
Okay.
So have you read the book yet?
The Sword and Serpent? No.
Okay, yeah. So it's definitely interesting. There's a lot of names too. So it's because it's because it's sort of set up like a historical fiction.
Fiction.
Yeah, it there's a lot of names, and it's names that we're not really used to, and in some ways it's it reminds me a little bit about fantasy in that sense. Fantasy stories are often like that as well, but for whatever reason fantasy stories, I think it's easier to remember, but it's easier to understand that you're not in your own world.
Oh
but
yeah.
but the Sword and the Serpent, you're in the real world. You're in
Because it's more of a historical fiction kind of.
yeah, so it just feels different, and it's harder to sort of I think
So,
this is about all historical books, not nothing about this one specifically. Just it's harder to sort of get used to historical fiction books.
yeah. There's a historical fiction book that I've been wanting to read that's on my radar. It's by a Polish author. It was really popular at the turn of the last century, like in the 1900s, called Quo Vadis,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
I had a friend
which
who read that.
and it's supposed to be during like the about the Christianity during the time of Emperor Nero.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's something that I think would probably be interesting.
Yeah, one day I'll probably read that, or maybe I'll convince my friend to
Come on and
read.
tell you about it.
Yeah, come on and tell me about it, and then I don't, and then maybe I can read a little bit of it. Oh, we're getting
Wow,
more friends.
a lot of people starting to cop on now.
Right. When we get to
Just as we're getting to the point where we're ready to wrap up, that's amazing.
okay, well, Brick, Lauren, and Haley, just so you guys know, just like, share, comment, subscribe, but also let me know what books you think I should read or talk about in the future, or interview the author, or that sort of thing. Brick was taking a nap. That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
so
the books that are commonly in my kind of wheelhouse are books that are more like um, classic books, like more like books that I know like were written in the past that people really kind of enjoyed that are more classic literature. So I've read, like Bronte, Dracula, Frankenstein, um a lot of some Charles Dickens. Is I'm trying to get into Charles Dickens. I've only read Oliver Twist so far.
gotcha. Not even Christmas Carol?
I have not read Christmas Carol. I've watched Muppet Christmas Carol. I feel like that's basically the same thing.
Say that again?
I've watched Muppet Christmas Carol and Scrooged. I feel like that's basically reading the book.
Did Scrooge? Is that a new one? Scrooged?
Scrooge is from like the late '80s
Oh,
with
never
Bill
mind.
Murray.
Oh, right.
It is a good one. If you've never seen it, you should watch it. I think it's on uh, Amazon Prime right now. If you have never seen it,
Gotcha.
that's
Apparently,
also narrated by
Brick.
Roberts.
So Brick says we need to start over. Start over from the top.
Yeah, or maybe he needs to start over from the beginning.
Yeah, that might be better. Uh, yeah, that might be best. But basically, long story short, the Two Cities by Andrew Willard Jones, uh, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight by J.R.R. Tolkien, Puritan's Empire by Charles Colomb, Sword and Serpent by Taylor Marshall, and 10 Ways to Destroy Your Child's Imagination by Anthony Esselin.
That one sounds compelling to me, if only for the fact that there would be. I know that Anthony's going to throw out so many good books
Yeah, exactly.
recommendations.
It's basically like, how do you grow an imagination?
Yeah, like that's because like reading like I'm reading C.S. Lewis, and I love C.S. One of the greatest books by C.S. Lewis that I've read is actually um, called "Till We Have Faces," and it's a retelling of the myth of Cupid and Psyche.
Really?
So it's really good, and it's one of. I think part of the reason why it's so good is because it just isn't Narnia, or it's not like his mere Christian, like it's not his like just essay, and it's not like he really he does a good job doing that, retelling that story. And then and if you're not familiar with the story of Cupid and Psyche, it's actually considered one of the earliest novels. Um, uh, so it's a really good story. I'm not actually going to retell it, but
Well, yeah, don't spoil it.
but then I know that one of the authors that he talked about a lot was like a guy by the name of George MacDonald. So I was like, I tried reading a little bit of him, and like George MacDonald is a lot more into like mythical fairies. Like it's a lot more imaginative, his
Yeah.
storytelling. So
Yeah, I need to eventually read some of that. Uh, so books in general, I mean,
yeah,
based on just the books I gave out, I think it's pretty
yeah,
generalist. That's what I'm
yeah.
Brick. It's what you would like to see me review or read, or interview the author or something like that. Like that,
And
it's more about what you want, not necessarily just books you like. I don't know. It has to have
uh,
a purpose. That's what I'm
I'll
saying.
I'll go ahead and mention the books that I'm reading recap.
Oh yeah.
So I'm reading The Coming of God, my sister Maria Bolding. So it's an Advent book, basically. Um, Dominion by Tom Holland. I've also read a few of his other books, Rubicon, Persian Fire, and Millennium. All of them have been really good. Uh, I think he's just a really good author in general, storytelling history. And then
Anthony, do you want to jump in while you're driving?
and then the last one that I'm reading is by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle, about
Welcome to the jungle.
Lithuanian immigrants in the Chicagoland meat industry.
Aw, dang it, Anthony can't jump on while I'm in the car.
Yeah, I was telling Connor, like I'm starting Dominion, but like I was telling him that you were mentioning about wanting to have like a conversation about the book at some point, or even try to get Tom Holland on your own channel, and that he should bring you on to talk about Dominion.
Maybe we'll have a competition to get who gets Tom Holland on first, and then just whoever gets him, everyone else can jump into the
Jump
show.
in, yeah.
So basically, it's just
barrage them.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like 6 people interviewing Tom Holland. Oh, wouldn't that be hilarious? Oh, Anthony, remember, you're always like, how do I get guests on? You know, you've been trying. It just, I guess you don't have the touch. I don't know. Who knows? Hey, you're gonna be getting that. What is it? It sounds like you're getting the director of The Chosen on so that's pretty awesome.
Oh, really? That's crazy.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't watched the Avoiding Babylon episode, the review on The Chosen, it was a lot of fun. It was less chaotic than their trivia show this week.
That's unbelievable.
And then Mac made it. Anyways, The Chosen YouTube channel responded to their video.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's hilarious. So it sounds like the creator might jump on at some point.
Hey, that's pretty cool. Well, I don't know. I guess they weren't really gushing about the show, but they were giving like honest critical feedback.
It was very balanced.
Oh, it was very balanced. Yeah.
Were you not watching, Darren?
That trivia game show was such a train wreck. I was like, I can't watch anymore. Sorry, Anthony. I'll have to go back and rewatch it.
You need to watch it. It was a good review. It was nowhere. I don't know why. It's like Anthony goes from drunk to sober. Almost. Anthony says we were charitable.
Yeah, I don't. Anthony's description of charitable. I'm not.
No, they were. I mean, technically, The Chosen said that they were being charitable. I don't think they used the word charitable, but they basically said, balanced or whatever.
Yeah.
Because, Rob was critical, Jason liked it more, and
you needed somebody who never saw the episode giving his 2 cents.
Well, that's why you should have been on it. Come on. Or actually, let's both go on the next one, and we both haven't seen it.
Yeah. There we go.
I don't know how that would help anybody.
I don't think that would have helped anything. No, I think that's entirely different from reviewing Lord of the Rings, when you're trying to like say here's the actual like mythology of the book.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing.
Yeah, and I'm like, here's the plot.
Yeah,
I love how we have now 7 people watching, but for like
the last 3 minutes.
but for the first like hour, we had
like nobody. Maybe one person. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for stopping by. Darren, I think we'll at some point have to do just like your recommendations. Like
I'll have to actually get some of them together. I might have to do like a top 10 or something like that of like books, I think.
Well, maybe top 20 because Anthony and I did top 20 movies.
Do I
So
have to
maybe,
do everything that Anthony does? Can I do my own thing?
well, Darren, you could do. You're like the one person that actually deserves to have a YouTube channel. So, and you're the one person who doesn't have a YouTube channel.
No, I don't.
You're
I don't deserve one of those.
okay. Well, then none of us deserve it. If you don't
I
deserve
don't
it,
even
no.
know. I don't even know what content I'd be so aimless with it.
Yes, but you're so smart.
Thanks for the compliment, but no.
Oh, come on. Remember, you're right about everything.
Yeah, right. False.
Yeah. False. Oh, any update on when you're doing your episode with Angela? The next
We were going to try to do it next Tuesday, but I have family coming in town, and I just don't think that I can set aside that time when family's in town. So we haven't thrown out another date yet when that would work. But hopefully we can try to do it before Christmas. I don't know if we will. We might be doing it during Christmas. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work.
do you see Brick's last comment?
Yeah. Don't be a prick.
Yes. Anyways, okay. So anything to I don't know, advertise, Darren?
If I had anything to advertise, you just touched upon it. So, but no.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And again, let me know in the comments, especially if you're watching this after the live stream, suggestions, things you want me to cover, that sort of thing. So in some sense, this is book recommendations from you to me, not just book recommendations from me to you and Darren to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want some good book recommendations.
Yeah, Darren will probably be checking back later too. So thank you all for watching and have a blessed evening. And also, we have some upcoming episodes this week. There's going to be a episode. I'm not sure if it's going to be live yet. If it is live, it's going to be 9 p.m. Central Tuesday. It's going to be me and Trevor from Trinity Brewing talking about basically how the year went of Plotlines. How did the history of Plotlines over the last year? And we talk, Trevor's a big listener of the show, a big guest of the show as well, and I can't wait to hear his thoughts on how Plotlines did this last year. And then also, Joseph Pierce and I will be doing an episode about the third. Well, in his chronology that we'll be doing, it will be we'll be doing The Horse and His Boy. We'll be talking about The Horse and His Boy.
That's a good one.
It's my favorite, so it's going to be.
I've heard a lot of people say that it's their favorite of the series.
It's interesting. It's Joseph Pierce's it was at some point, or it still is, one of his least favorites.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I love The Silver Chair, but that's only because my personality profile matches Puddle Glum.
You are Puddle Glum.
I am Puddle Glum.
Yes. Okay. Maybe you'll have to come on for that episode with Joseph and I. It'll be me, you, and Joseph Pierce. I think that'd be a great episode because you can, you can tell him you are Puddle Glum.
That's a bit optimistic, but yeah.
Oh, that's great. Anyways, so we'll have that, and then the week after Christmas, it will be, or the week of Christmas, I guess, I'll be releasing an episode about sort of this drastic change in Christianity, or drop of Christianity in the United Kingdom with Vonday Radio. So that's gonna be a fun episode. So that's what's going on in Plotlines, and who knows what will happen after that. But that's all I'm focused on at the moment.
Sounds like you got some good things lined up.
Yep. Hopefully, hopefully it goes well. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Bye.
All right.